right, it is Super Bowl week, so I figured it would be a fun idea for us to take a look back at the last 15 Super Bowls and tier rank them. Let's hop into today's video. All right, so funny enough, this is about when I started taking the NFL really seriously, I would say, as a fan. I remember vividly each and every single one of these Super Bowls 15 years ago. I'm 25, 10 years old. So just bear with me through some of these rankings. Obviously, I'm not going to pinpoint remember exactly every roster and exactly every game. I was 10 years old. But the New Orleans Saints versus the Indianapolis Colts, the Saints pick up the win 31-17. I do have some really fun, vivid memories of this Super Bowl. My aunt hosted a Super Bowl party, got one of the cakes with the Saints logo, one with the Colts logo. My uncle was like, we got to root for the Colts, Peyton Manning. I was like, I'm on board. My aunt was like, we're rooting for the Saints, Drew Brees, New Orleans. I was like, I already told my uncle I was on board with the Colts thing. So obviously, New Orleans goes on to win. Drew Brees gets his Super Bowl. Drew Brees, I do remember him being pretty phenomenal in this game. 32 of 39 for 288 yards and 2 touchdowns. Of course, the Sean Payton surprise onside kick. We don't have that as a possibility anymore with the new rules. And the interception for a touchdown by Tracy Porter to put the nail in the coffin. Overall, I would say that this was a fun Super Bowl. All things considered, everything that was going on in New Orleans, Drew Brees getting his first win, the game being fairly close until that nail and coffin pick six. I'm going to put this in the B tier. I think that this is a B tier level Super Bowl. I could see where some of you would say C, but I'm going to throw this in the B tier. Up next, we got Super Bowl 45, which saw the Green Bay Packers pick up the 31-25 victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Aaron Rodgers' one and only career Super Bowl appearance. We didn't think it would be the way at this time, but it was, and the Packers walked out of there with a massive W. I thought Greg Jennings played phenomenal in this game. Jordy Nelson was really solid for Green Bay. This was, the best Packers team, I think, in the Aaron Rodgers era. I mean, obviously it resulted in the Super Bowl, but the defense was at such a high level, as was the offensive personnel of, guys like Jordy Nelson, but Donald Driver was still producing, Greg Jennings. You had some really good guys on that team. Rodgers was phenomenal in the Super Bowl, outplayed Ben Roethlisberger, and ultimately, to me, that's what decided this game. Aaron Rodgers being that much better than Big Ben on that day. Big Ben was 25 of 40 for 263, 2-2. Rodgers 24 of 39 for 304 and 3 touchdowns. Jordy Nelson 9 for 140 and a touchdown. So obviously he was huge in this game. I'm also going to throw this in the B tier. For me, I just look back on these as early stages of me being a football fan and getting into the game at a deeper level than just the Eagles. And I really remember these good quarterback performances, Brees and Rodgers back to back, and just really developing an appreciation for the game itself. Then we get to Super Bowl 46, and it is the New York Giants defeating the New England Patriots 21-17. This was the second time that these guys played, and I don't know if it's just me, but the game just didn't have a lot of juice on it. Hakeem Nicks was massive for the Giants in this run, and it was another miracle run for the Giants where they step up and they beat Brady, but I don't know, there just wasn't enough juice behind it. I'm throwing it in the C tier. I think it's super cool and interesting that Eli Manning just seems to be Tom Brady's kryptonite, and watching it growing up, I thought Brady was going to get his lick back, and he just didn't. Eli still just owned him. Close, defensive, low-scoring game. But ultimately, it just didn't have the juice that these two before it did have for me. Super Bowl 47, the Baltimore Ravens defeat the San Francisco 49ers 34-31. This is an A-tier level Super Bowl for me. Obviously, both teams in the 30s, a higher scoring game, but man, the game was all Baltimore, and then the lights went out, and then San Francisco goes on a run. You have that battle of the Harbaugh brothers. It was Ray Lewis's last game. Joe Flacco had been playing out of his mind all playoffs. I'm pretty sure he beat like Brady, Peyton Manning on this run, went on to win the Super Bowl. Like, this was the playoff run that got Joe Flacco that massive contract, and he looked like he deserved every single piece of it in this run. The guy was fantastic. 22 of 33 for 287 yards and 3 touchdowns in this game. Anquan Bolden was huge. The Jacoby Jones kickoff return touchdown. That Ravens defense, Suggs, Lewis, Ed Reed, just absolute studs. And then on the other side for the 49ers, like, you had some real ballers. Kaepernick in his prime, Frank Gore, Michael Crabtree, Vernon Davis. You had on the defensive side, Justin Smith, you had Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman. Like, there were some real hitters in this Super Bowl. I thought it was really, really solid. The lights out, and then San Francisco storming back created some excitement. It wasn't neck and neck competitive the entire way, but at the end of the game, we got there, and the Ravens held on to win the game. I loved it. I loved the Super Bowl. And then we follow that up with Super Bowl 48, in which the Seattle Seahawks won 43-8 over the Denver Broncos. And, you know, I'm probably not going to throw a single game in the F tier category. Well, maybe one. But this has got to be a D category. At least, like, there were some scoring from the Seattle Seahawks, but the Legion of Boom absolutely annihilated in this game. They came out firing on all cylinders. There was the safety on the Noshawn Moreno fumble to open up the game, and then, you know, there's a 69-yard interception return from Malcolm Smith. There's Percy Harvin to open up the gates of the second half, where Seattle went up 22-0 at half, and Percy Harvin immediately returns the opening kickoff to make it 29-0. This was just an all-out beatdown from start to finish. This Seattle team was so legit. The Legion of Boom was so good. You had Russell Wilson on that cheap contract, so you have no problem paying guys out the wazoo. Pete Carroll masterclass. Going into this Super Bowl, it was the league's best defense versus the league's best offense, and the league's best defense beat the ever-living shit out of the league's best offense. Peyton Manning drops a Super Bowl here. Brutal to see, but Seattle gets a massive win. And the Seattle Seahawks found themselves back in the Super Bowl for Super Bowl 49, but they would lose this game 28-24. This is an A tier Super Bowl for me. You know what? This is an S tier Super Bowl for me. I really have fond memories of this game. You're seeing Tom Brady, the GOAT, go up against the Legion of Boom. That really, for me, could be the best defense I witnessed growing up. You know, I was a little young for those early 2000s Bears defenses, and some of those Ravens defenses certainly compete, but the Legion of Boom had this aura around it from when I was growing up. And then there's Brady on the biggest stage, battling it out in the Super Bowl. Obviously, you see Brady make some plays in the back of the end zone to, who was it? Danny Amendola caught one of those touchdowns, and I think Gronk caught another one. Brady was 37 of 50 for 328 yards and 4 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in this game. Russell Wilson was 12 of 21 for 247, 2 and an interception. Of course, we have to talk about it. The play at the goal line, the play that I used for the picture for the tier list. 2nd and goal from the 1. Why did the Seahawks not just run the ball with a beast mode Marshawn Lynch? They could have been back-to-back champs. They could have been a great dynasty. You know, a lot of people on that team say that that's when it fell apart. The trust with Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson, and everything became more than it was. If they had won that game, are we talking about the Seahawks as more of a dynasty? Probably. But instead, Malcolm Butler gets the interception on the goal line. The Patriots go on to win. Tom Brady wins another Super Bowl. This was just, as you know, Twitter would say, cinema. Then we get to Super Bowl 50, which saw MVP Cam Newton fall to old man Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl. I'm going to put this in the C tier. It's cool because it was Peyton's like last ride as the sheriff, and he was retiring and yada yada, but you know, this wasn't by any means Super Bowl 49. Okay, it wasn't really close to that. Peyton was, you know, not himself. 13 of 23 for 141 yards and a pick. Cam had a really rough day against that Broncos defense. That Broncos defense was excellent. Cam was 18 of 41 for 265 and an interception. Of course, the fumble that he didn't dive on. Von Miller gets Super Bowl MVP in this game. You know, it was good for Broncos fans after what they had to, sit down and bear witness to 2 years prior in the Super Bowl, getting absolutely just railroaded by the Seahawks. But as an impartial viewer, this Super Bowl kind of mid. Then we get to Super Bowl 51, the 28-3 comeback, and I may surprise some people, but I'm putting that in the A tier. Here's the deal with the 28-3 comeback. I think it's become a little overrated on how fun that Super Bowl was to watch, because for a wide majority of it, a lot of us kind of thought it was over. 28-3 in the third quarter, people were kind of checked out. We thought, oh my goodness, Atlanta is dominating. They're just going to win this game. And, a lot of people were writing off Brady. If I got to be honest, I was part of the club that was like, damn, they're going to lose this game and the Falcons are just going to absolutely destroy them. Now, of course, when the ball started getting rolling and the Patriots started coming back, everybody was on the edge of their seat. And that last, fourth quarter and overtime was uber exciting. But for the length of the Super Bowl, I don't think it was quite good enough to get it into the S tier. James White was massive this game. This was around the time where Tom Brady started getting called an RB checkdown merchant. 14 catches, 110 yards, and a touchdown for James White as well. He runs in the game winner in overtime. Julian Edelman had what I consider to be one of the craziest catches of all time in this Super Bowl. The bobble up in the air in between two defenders, still snags it in. Like, there were historical moments in this Super Bowl. And Falcons fans, the 28-3 choke is still a meme today. I'm sorry for you. But it's an A tier Super Bowl for me. Super Bowl 52. As if anybody had any question with, Eagles fan here, where this would go. I do think it's fair to give it S tier regardless. A 41-33 absolute slugfest of a Super Bowl. But the Nick Foles miracle run capped off with the first ever Super Bowl victory for the Philadelphia Eagles was just storybook. 28 of 43 for 373 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception for Foles. Brady gave it all he could. 28 of 48, 505 yards, and 3 touchdowns. But this Eagles team was just special, man. Whether it's Alshon Jeffrey, Corey Clement, Zach Ertz, the offensive line, or on the defense, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, like, he just had guys that were just so Philly to their core. It was a very, very special moment. The Philly play call, of course, the touchdown pass from Trey Burton to Nick Foles. It was just a magical run, a magical night, and an S tier level Super Bowl. And we go from one of the best Super Bowls of all time to one of the worst. The only one that's getting F tier here, the New England Patriots 13-3 victory over the Los Angeles Rams in the Super Bowl. Listen, it is what it is. Super Bowl 53 was a Bill Belichick masterclass, if I have seen one, to limit the Sean McVay offense that had been outstanding all year and really, really producing with Todd Gurley, Brandon Cooks, Jared Goff. I think Cooper Kupp was on this team, Robert Woods. Like, they had a really good receiving core. Sean McVay was producing at a very high level with this team, and Bill Belichick went in there and just absolutely spazzed out defensively. And there is a place for defense in the NFL and in the Super Bowl, but 13-3 is just a little too low scoring for my enjoyment. It became a punt fest. Brady didn't have a touchdown pass. Goff didn't have a touchdown pass. The only touchdown of the game was Sony Michel running one in. Gronk had a big catch, but at the end of the day, this just was not an exciting Super Bowl. Super Bowl 54, the Kansas City Chiefs win their first ring in the Patrick Mahomes era, 31-20 over the San Francisco 49ers. For me, this is an A tier level Super Bowl. I thought that this was really, really good. This was back when rooting for Patrick Mahomes wasn't the devil's work, right? It was this young upstart, super talented. This was the Super Bowl that Tyreek Hill was on the roster. You saw Shanahan and Garoppolo take an early lead in this Super Bowl. They were up 20-10 at one point, and in the fourth quarter, Kansas City comes all the way back behind a Travis Kelce touchdown and 2 Damian Williams touchdowns. Shout out you if you remember the name Damian Williams, Super Bowl hero. This was great. The comeback, we didn't know it was the beginning of this Chiefs dynasty at the time, but we knew Patrick Mahomes had something very, very special, and he put on an absolute show in this game. Super Bowl 55, Brady's, maestro performance in Tampa Bay to prove, hey, I'm not just a Belichick merchant. I can go out there and win these by myself as well. And he certainly did that. 31-9 over the Kansas City Chiefs. For me, this is a C-tier Super Bowl. It's cool seeing Brady get the ring. It falls kind of in there with Peyton. Obviously, Brady was more impressive, but at the end of the day, this was a blowout in the Super Bowl. The pass rush that the Buccaneers had just completely annihilated the Chiefs all night. They just could not move the ball. They could not get Patrick Mahomes time. And very quickly and very early on into this game, you knew that Todd Bowles had this Chiefs team in an absolute blender with that pass rush, and it was going to be a long, impossible night. And that is pretty much exactly what it was. Brady to Gronk for 2 touchdowns was fun, but ultimately, this was just a very, very, one of these 2 teams is better Super Bowl. Super Bowl 56, one of those Super Bowls that I think is a little bit overhated at this point in time. I have it as my B tier, the Rams 23-20 victory over the Bengals. Seeing Matt Stafford get a ring, like he deserved it, Aaron Donald deserved it. This was the capper to Cooper Kupp's Triple Crown season. He was Super Bowl MVP. He was 8 for 92 and 2 touchdowns in this game, catching the game-winning touchdown with how much time was left? 1:25 in the fourth quarter. Aaron Donald with the huge pressure at the end of the game. Like, that is what Super Bowl moments are made of. This game was competitive all the way through. You had that T. Higgins 75-yard touchdown to open up the second half. Joe Burrow, Joe Shiesty, and the Bengals had just defeated the Chiefs, and they were at an all-time high. I understand that this isn't a Chiefs Super Bowl, but I don't think that means it's a bad Super Bowl. I enjoyed this Super Bowl very much. Super Bowl 57, the Kansas City Chiefs defeat the Philadelphia Eagles 38-35. I am putting this in the A tier because I think there should be limited spots in the S tier. Before last year, I had this in the S tier. Listen, this was a very, very good game. 38-35, really fun performances from both Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, talk about the day he had in defeat. Probably the best fight that I've ever seen a QB put up in a loss. 27 of 38 with 304 passing yards and a touchdown with 70 yards on the ground and 3 touchdowns. Mahomes, though, man, did just enough and made just enough right plays like he always does in the big spots, whether it's this team, Mahomes, Reed, Spags, Chris Jones, Travis Kelce. Like, you guys know all the makings of this dynasty at this point. They just continued to make plays when they needed to. Nick Bolton with that fumble recovery for a touchdown was just absolutely massive. The Eagles had a couple costly turnovers in this game. The Chiefs were mistake-free, and we're now seeing the Super Bowl again this Sunday in Super Bowl 59. Will it be the same? Will it be different? Time will tell. And lastly, we have Super Bowl 58, which the Kansas City Chiefs won in overtime, 25-22. The first ever overtime Super Bowl. That's got to be S tier. This was absolutely fantastic from start to finish, a very competitive game. But at the end of the day, of course, Patrick Mahomes made the play in overtime that Brock Purdy and the 49ers could not. We had the Jauan Jennings to Christian McCaffrey touchdown pass in this for, San Francisco to go up 10-0 just for the Chiefs won them. And then, quickly by the end of the third quarter, Kansas City's back up. But Jauan Jennings, he scores a touchdown, field goal, and Mecole Hardman walked it off. This was, something similar to what I think we're seeing this year. Best roster versus best player and best coach. And in overtime, the best player and the best coach came out on top. And for me, this is an S tier Super Bowl. But as always, let me know your thoughts on these rankings in the comment section down below. Tomorrow, my official prediction for Super Bowl 59 will be out. I appreciate your guys' support. I'll catch you next time. Peace.